He took his father's hand the same afternoon he came to sign the will. That's the part that still gets me. Before I tell you what my nephew did in a hospice room with a dying man's ink barely dry on the deed, I need you to understand the kind of man I thought I was, because that man almost lost everything by trusting the wrong blood. My name is Owen Hartwich, 63 years old, 38 years as a freight dispatcher. I balanced my checkbook every Sunday morning. I read the fine print on everything. My late wife used to tease me for spending 20 minutes at a gas pump, deciding if the car wash was worth $4 extra. I tell you that so you understand what kind of fool I almost became. The kind who trusts everyone he loves and questions everyone he doesn't. My brother Hollis was 4 years older than me, and raised me more than our father ever did. When Dad walked out in '68, Hollis was 12, I was 8, and he became the one who taught me to shave, to throw a curveball, to apologize to a girl. He was the steadiest man I ever knew. So when his daughter-in-law called in late October to say he'd been moved into hospice care in Boise, I threw 3 shirts in a duffel bag and drove 11 hours straight. Pancreatic cancer, 90 pounds. Hands shaking around a cup of ice chips. But his mind was sharp, and the first thing he did when I walked in was grab my wrist and ask, "Where's the boy? Where's Cale?" Cale, my nephew, Hollis's only son, 41, living up in Spokane in commercial insurance. I told my brother he hadn't arrived yet. Hollis nodded, but he didn't look relieved. He looked tired in a way that went past the body. I sat with him 3 days before the woman across the hall said a word to me. Her name was Esther Pimberly, late 70s, dying of something I never asked about, visited once a month by a daughter who stayed 20 minutes and left. I'd nod to her in the hallway, brought her a muffin once. Polite, quiet, nothing more. Until the third night, around midnight, when I stepped out to clear my head and found her sitting up in her chair, lamp low. "Your brother's dying," she said. "Not unkind, just fact." "Yes, ma'am. He's worried about something, talks in his sleep. The nurses don't listen. I do." I thanked her for keeping him company in her own way and went back to Hollis's room, not thinking much of it. Morphine makes people say all kinds of things. The next night, she said the thing that saved my brother's estate. Past 2 in the morning. I'd just left Hollis's room while the night nurse changed his line, walking toward the coffee machine, when I saw her door open and her wheelchair positioned right in the frame, watching the hall like she'd been waiting for me. She lifted a finger. "Come here, quiet." I sat. "Your nephew gets in tomorrow," she said. "Yes. Your brother told a nurse last night, half out of his mind. Said the boy was coming and he was afraid of what he'd do. Said he should have changed the will. Said it 3 times. The nurse just patted his hand. She looked at me with pale gray eyes, clear as glass. "I had a son once. He's why I'm in here alone. Whatever your nephew tells you tomorrow, don't believe a word of it. Don't sign anything. Drive home tonight if you can." I told myself she was a grieving woman projecting her own wreckage onto my family. Cale was the boy I'd taught to bait a hook on an Idaho lake when he was 7. The idea that he'd come here to do something underhanded didn't compute. I dismissed her. That was my first mistake. Cale arrived at 11 the next morning in a charcoal jacket, no tie, smelling like airport coffee and aftershave. He hugged me a beat too long before he even looked at his father. I noticed. I dismissed that too. He sat with Hollis for 10 minutes, said all the right things, held his hand. At one point, Hollis turned his head, looked past Cale straight at me, opened his mouth like he wanted to tell me something, and closed it again. I'll never forget that. He looked at me and swallowed whatever it was. An hour later, Cale asked to talk arrangements over coffee in the cafeteria. He laid his hands flat on the table, like a man opening a business meeting. "Dad's been worrying about the cabin in Coeur d'Alene," he said. That was the lakefront property Hollis had built with his own hands in the late 70s, worth north of $700,000 now. He wants it signed over to me directly so I can handle things, sell it if I need to cover final expenses. Otherwise it goes to probate and eats itself alive in legal fees. You know how that goes. I did know. I'd watched a friend lose half his mother's estate to lawyers for exactly that reason. "What about Bryony?" I asked. "My niece, his sister, a community college teacher in Oregon we hadn't seen in 5 years. She's not in the will for the cabin. Mom and Dad set that up years ago. Bry got the life insurance and savings. This is just paperwork. I asked to see what Hollis had drawn up. Cale smiled, just at the corner of his mouth, and said he'd hate to put me through legal documents while I was grieving. Just sign as a witness when the notary comes. Esther's voice came back to me right then, clear as if she were standing next to me. Don't sign anything. I'd still like to see it, I said. I'll come to your hotel after dinner. Something shifted in his face for half a second. The smile stayed. His eyes didn't. At 4 that afternoon, a man in a brown suit with a leather briefcase showed up asking for Cale Hartwich, the notary. I insisted on being in the room. Cale said, of course. We just need your signature too, as witness. On the folding tray over my dying brother's bed sat 3 documents. The first was the quitclaim deed transferring the cabin to Cale. That part was real. Underneath it, a power of attorney making Cale sole agent over all of Hollis's financial affairs, effective immediately. Underneath that, a beneficiary change on a $400,000 union life insurance policy, Cale's name freshly typed over what looked like Brianny's, still faintly visible in the carbon. I asked what the other 2 documents were. Protective measures, Cale said, in case Dad's situation changes. He's got days. Why does he need a power of attorney? Why is the insurance changed? Bri agreed to it. Did she? The door closed behind his eyes again. The notary looked between us like a man realizing his afternoon had gone sideways. I asked for a few minutes alone with my brother and my nephew, and once the door shut, I said, "Call your sister. Put her on speaker." He didn't move. I dialed her myself. "Bryony, it's Uncle Owen. Did you agree to be removed as beneficiary on your father's life insurance?" Silence. Then, "What life insurance?" Cale was already talking over her. Misunderstanding, protective, calm down. But she cut through him. "Cale, what did you do?" Then to me, "Don't sign anything. I'll be on a flight tonight." I hung up. The room was so quiet I could hear the oxygen machine clicking, my brother breathing on the bed. "You don't understand the financial situation," Cale said. "Dad owes me. I've been paying for things for years. I deserve—" "Get out." He stared at me. "And I want to tell you, the boy who'd baited that hook in Idaho wasn't in his face anymore. Somebody else was looking out through his eyes. Somebody already 3 moves ahead, already recalculating." He picked up his briefcase and the documents and left without another word. I sat on the edge of my brother's bed and took his hand. He was crying without sound, tears just running into the pillow. "It's all right, Hollis," I said. "It's all right." He passed 31 hours later, just before sunrise on a Wednesday. Bryony was there. I was there. Cale wasn't. A week after the funeral, Bryony and I sat down with Hollis's real lawyer, a woman named Marjorie who'd handled his affairs for 20 years. The actual will split the cabin 50-50 between Cale and Bryony, gave Bryony the full $400,000 in life insurance, and divided the $86,000 in savings 3 ways, with a third going to a trade school scholarship fund. Every document Cale had brought to that hospice room would have gutted it. The cabin his outright, the insurance his, and with power of attorney, 30 hours was more than enough time to drain the savings before the will was even read. Marjorie looked at me across her desk. "Where did you get the instinct to question it?" I told her about Esther. I drove back to Boise that Saturday with a box of pastries and a card I'd written by hand, wanting to thank her. The nurse's face fell when I said the name. Esther had died 2 days earlier, quietly, in her sleep. But she'd left an envelope at the front desk with my name on it in shaky handwriting, in case I came back. I opened it on a bench outside in the cold. Her son, Tomlin, had taken everything she had back in 2009, the house, the savings, her husband's rings, and never spoken to her again once there was nothing left to take. She wrote that she'd spent 15 years in places smaller than that hospice room, and the worst part wasn't the losing, it was that nobody had warned her. A sister-in-law had suspected for years and said nothing because it wasn't her place. Esther decided that if she ever saw it happening to someone else, she would say something. It would be her place. "So I said something to you," she wrote. "Whatever happened, I hope you are safe." I sat on that bench a long time, not feeling the cold. Cale called twice over the next month. I didn't answer. He sent an email about misunderstandings, about how I'd embarrassed him in front of a notary, about how our family was broken now and it was my fault. I read it once and deleted it. Bryony, on the other hand, I talk to almost every Sunday now. She flew down for Easter with her 2 kids. Her oldest drew me a picture of a roadrunner that's still on my refrigerator. About 6 months after Hollis died, I got a letter from a woman in Spokane I'd never heard of, Dolores, 68, a widow whose father had just passed. Going through his things, she'd found a notebook listing names of people who'd defrauded him. Cale's name was in it. He'd borrowed $47,000 from her father and never paid a cent back. She'd found my number through Hollis's obituary. I called Bryony. Bryony called Marjorie. What we uncovered by that fall wasn't a one-time scheme. It was a pattern years deep. Cale had done this to family, to clients, to his father's old friends, to anyone who'd let him near a checkbook. $300,000 in unsecured debt. 2 pending civil suits in Washington. A gambling problem nobody in the family had known about. The cabin play at the hospice had been his last roll of the dice. Leverage he could have flipped within the week to buy himself 6 more months ahead of his creditors. He went to trial 19 months later, not for what he tried at the hospice, which would have been hard to prove and which Bryony and I let go, since we still had everything that mattered. He went to trial for what he'd done to Dolores's father and 2 other elderly clients in Spokane. He got 6 years. He's still inside. Bryony writes him sometimes. I haven't. His son, my great-nephew, 14 now, lives with his mother in Bellingham. I send him a birthday card every year and a check at Christmas. I don't expect anything back. I just want him to know somebody in his father's family thought of him kindly. A year after the trial, Bryony and I started something small through her church and a senior center near me in Tucson. Nothing fancy. We go in once a month, tell our story, tell Esther's story with her daughter's blessing, and then we just listen. I've heard my own story, names changed, from probably 40 different people in 2 years. A son who needs 1 signature, a grandson helping with the accounts, a daughter who knows just the right person to set up a trust. It happens every day, in every state, to people who balance their checkbooks every Sunday morning. I keep Esther's letter in my nightstand drawer. I take it out sometimes. I think about how easy it would have been for her to say nothing. She was dying, she owed me nothing. She'd met me twice. She stopped me in a dark hallway at 2 in the morning anyway, and 3 days later she was gone. That woman saved my brother's last wishes. She saved my niece's inheritance. She saved me from becoming the man who signed away his own brother's estate and spent the rest of his life trying to live with it. So if you're watching something in your own family right now that doesn't sit right, a signature somebody's rushing you toward, a paper that needs to be handled today, before your father passes, before your mother wakes up, slow down. Take it home. Photograph it. Call someone who has nothing to gain from the answer. The people who actually love you will wait a day. The people who don't, won't. I drive past that hospice sometimes when I visit Bryony and the kids. It still smells like lavender from the parking lot. Esther's room faces the road, and I look up at that window every time. I only spoke to her twice in my life, but she's family in a way some of my own blood never was. Because family, in the end, is who tells you the truth when it costs them everything and gains them nothing. If this story meant something to you, tell me in the comments who your Esther was, the stranger who told you the truth when no one else would. And if something's gnawing at you right now, I'll tell you exactly what she told me. Don't sign it tonight. Drive home if you can. The truth will still be there in the morning, and so will the people who actually love you.